Hello. Everything is just peachy over here.
You've been in a never-ending committee meeting.
Yes, as Housing and Homelessness Committees want to do. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you got here because we were kind of shooting the shit with the audience and people were starting to tell dad jokes. So I'm very happy that you're here to save us from that.
Also have dad jokes, so that's not helpful, I
Uh,
think.
Please give us your best one.
How about them Lakers? I don't know. That's all I got right now. My brain is fried.
Okay, no problem. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Sorry for the delay, everybody. Councilmember, thank you so much for being here despite the very long committee meeting. Hopefully, this is more fun than the committee meeting. Um, Let me go ahead and just broadcast us live. 1 second. You know what? In the interest of time, I'm going to skip that. So welcome to our first happy hour of 2025. Sorry for the long break in happy hours. We were busy with HLA and then the election, and it just got to be too much, but we're very happy to be back. And especially talking to newly elected Councilmember Ysabel Jurado. Before we get to our conversation with the council member, we're going to give you our thoughts on the election locally, give you an update on our members club, talk about Measure HLA, our effort to extend the Ballona Creek bike path, the City of LA budget, and go over a few wins of the month. They're all wins this time, no fails. Our icebreaker is, what transportation project do you want to see happen in CD 14? I'm going to turn it over to Josh to reflect on the election and answer that question.
Thank you, Michael. I used to live along Broadway in downtown LA for a couple years, and so I am very excited and hopeful about Metro's future BRT that they've been talking about for a long time. Hopefully, it'll get built. But we're going to talk about the election. So I think there's a lot of reasons to feel bad nationally, be worried about. I think there's a lot of concerns, there's a lot of fear, but locally things did go fairly well for Streets for All. There was a strong progressive turnout in a number of different cities locally. Just in the city of Los Angeles, 7 of 15 council members on the city council are endorsed by Streets for All. We're very close to a majority. 4 out of our 5 candidates in the city of LA did win their races. In Culver City, 2 out of 3 candidates that we endorsed won, including Bubba Fish, friend of Streets for All and former steering committee member. So we flipped to a progressive majority there. In West Hollywood, John Erickson and Danny Hang won both their races. So we have a progressive majority in West Hollywood that is being continued. And then in Santa Monica, we had an amazing result where we flipped a conservative majority on the city council to a progressive supermajority, and 5 candidates won in Santa Monica. So now we have 5 allies on the city council, it's the whole city council. I'm going to turn it over to Katrina to talk about our members club.
Thanks, Josh. The transportation project I would be really excited to see in CD 14 is Link US, or Link Union Station. It's a major transformation of Union Station, one component of which is run through rail tracks through Union Station. Those of you who've used it for heavy rail like Metrolink or Amtrak might know that the trains have to back in and then back out of the station. But run through tracks would allow for trains to go straight through, as it says in the name. And so this would unlock a lot of increased regional rail frequency that would really support mobility all throughout the region. But I'm here to talk about the Members Club today. The Streets for All Members Club is something that we launched in the middle of last year. It includes, a way for folks who want to make continuous donations to the organization on a regular basis to build community with us and with each other. It includes members-only events. It includes discounts that you can get at retailers who are friends of SFA. One of the biggest pieces is members get a say in political endorsements. Those of you who've been following Streets for All for a bit know that Streets for All is special. There's a component that is a political action committee, which allows us to make formal endorsements and donations to candidates. And, we got a lot of feedback from our community that people would like to have more of a say in how the organization does it. And so that's what the members club will allow for the opportunity to do. If you go to the next slide, we started a membership drive last year and we've crossed the 120 member threshold, which is really exciting, but we are really hoping for 200 members by the end of September, and that's our fiscal year. And that will allow Streets for All to continue doing the great political work that we do. There's different levels for different different donation amounts. And you can see here and on our website at streetsforall.org/members what the different perks are at each different level. And, thank you for donating. Back over to Michael.
Thanks, Katrina. My CD14 project I think I'm most looking forward to is a oldie but goodie. In 2019, Streets for All started Venice Blvd For All.com, Venice Blvd For All, and it's our effort to get Venice Boulevard to be a complete street from the ocean to downtown. And we've gotten a lot of support for it and hoping to see that come to fruition in the district. So HLA, what's happening? There is a draft ordinance. There will be a joint Transportation Public Works Committee meeting on February 12th. The draft ordinance has some pretty major holes. And so we are working on with our allies to make sure those holes are addressed. This is 10 months after the election. The city still has all repaving on mobility plan corridors paused, which we find very frustrating in a city that someone's injured every 5 hours and killed every 2 days. And so we really want to see a sense of urgency here, and we're hoping for a lot of positive progress on the 12th. There's a few key changes. These are the three biggest ones. We believe that the way the law is written, and especially our intent, was HLA should apply to metro projects. So we're making sure that it would. And we're working with our allies on that. We believe that the city should try to apply HLA to any projects that have been funded by grants, but are not yet under construction. We're using someone else's money to implement the mobility plan. Why not? And the third one is the city was trying to include a required appeals process within the city before someone could sue for compliance. We don't think that's legal, and we're working to get that changed to be an optional appeals process. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens on the 12th, and we'll report back on how it goes. Quick update on our effort to extend the Ballona Creek bike path. As a quick reminder, we've been working on this for 2 years. We raised over $400,000 a year and a half ago. We completed a feasibility study. We turned that study over to LA's Bureau of Engineering, and they applied for a $7 million grant from the Active Transportation Program from the California Transportation Commission to get the project shovel ready. So all the technical drawings and all the nuts and bolts that go into actually producing a project to get those done. So we scored a 93. That's a really, really good score. In past years, that would have guaranteed funding, but ATP funding was cut by Governor Newsom by $400 million last year. It took it from a $500 million program down to a $100 million program. That only allowed the CTC to award 13 projects statewide, and you had to score a 96 or above. To put it differently, only 4% of the projects that applied actually got funded. We think this is a huge risk for the ATP program as a whole. It costs cities up to $50,000 to apply. And if you do the math, it's millions of dollars that cities are spending to apply for very low likelihood of success. So we are working with a coalition to restore the $400 million, which would not only fund the Ballona Creek extension project and get it shovel ready, it would fund 35 other projects throughout the state. And then we're working on a separate effort to just have this be appropriated, so we don't have to fight for this money every single year. So stay tuned on that. Lastly, speaking of money, the city of LA's budget. This is pretty sad. Last year it was really tough, a lot of cuts. This year it's not looking much better, especially with the fires. There's a lot of money that is going to be needed to help the city repair. But the bottom line is, if we want a car-free Olympics, if we want HLA and safer streets and Vision Zero, none of this is happening without dollars being allocated to it. The city deeply cut both DOT and Streets LA last year. To give you an example, Streets LA has a budget for 200 curb ramps citywide. That's 50 intersections where they can do ADA compliant ramps. The city legally cannot repave and put in a bike lane or a bus lane without also doing curb ramps. So this kind of gums up the entire system and is slowing everything down. So we're really fighting to make sure that Streets LA has budget for many more curb ramps. It's at least over 1,000 that would be needed to actually keep up with the ATP pace, with bike lane and bus lane implementation pace that's needed. The other thing we're trying to fix, this wouldn't even cost money, is currently the city administrative officer is not allowing departments to use grant funds to hire people to deliver the projects. I know that sounds really strange, but the city of LA has won $500 million over the last 8 years from state and federal sources to implement projects. But DOT and Streets LA and BOE don't have enough staff members to actually implement the things. So we are risking losing some of that money. We're constantly asking for extensions. It's a mess. We think the city should be more flexible and allow grant funds to be used to hire people to deliver grant funded projects. That would unlock a lot. We are working on a budget letter that we're asking council members to sign on to try to make these things a priority and fix things. And we'll keep you posted. There will certainly be an opportunity for people to weigh in once the city council goes through the budget process later this year. Over to Katrina for our first win of the month.
Thanks, Michael. I'll talk briefly about some wins from our state team. The first one is towards the end of last year, we released the California Mobility Report Card, which scores your state legislators on their efficacy in passing and otherwise supporting mobility-related legislation, including bills that we've sponsored. So check that out at sfareportcard.com. Our second quick hit from the state team is that last week we announced the launch of SB 79 by Senator Scott Wiener, friend of the organization and friend of transit. This is a bill that would potentially upzone areas around major transit stops, as well as make it easier for transit agencies themselves to build on land that they own. For example, this might be something like a park and ride lot near a station, or the sidewalks or other land around a station itself. And it would also make it easier for these to be approved. So stay tuned for more bills to come. This bill is also still in its very early stages, but keep a lookout for the great work of our state team. Back over to Michael.
Two last quick things. Through the city budget process, departments put in what are called CTIEPs. They're basically requests for funds. Streets LA submitted a nearly $45 million CTIEP for HLA implementation. This would implement a lot of LADOT's Olympic list and a lot of other priorities throughout the city. We're going to work really hard to make sure this money is allocated, but it's the first real money we've actually seen towards HLA implementation, which is very exciting. Lastly, proposed bike projects. So these are not final. They could change. They have not been officially signed off on, but this is a list of projects. Some of them are Olympics related, some of them aren't, that the city is currently considering. These are all protected bike lanes that's on your screen right now. The one I'm especially excited about is Pico Boulevard between Crenshaw and Figueroa. Right now, we're going to get protected bike lanes on Venice all the way to Arlington. And there's a safe way to get up to Pico. It's very close. And then you could take a protected bike lane on Pico from Arlington all the way into downtown LA. This would be essentially a way to bike safely from downtown to the beach. So we're really excited about that. A lot of other great stuff here. There's also some unprotected bike lanes planned, including Hauser, West Boulevard, and Hoover. So stay tuned. We hope this gets approved. And most importantly, we hope the funding gets approved. This is a quick 15-second video. These are existing bike lanes, class 1 and 4. These are the Olympics improvements that we just talked about. And then these are other planned bike lanes. And when you put it all together, it's not great, but it's getting better. Quick preview for next month. We're excited to have newly elected Councilmember Bubba Fish for the city of Culver City on, and that will be Wednesday, February 12th at 5 p.m. Ysabel, thank you so much for your patience and welcome. Let me give you a quick introduction. Ysabel is a former tenants' rights attorney, affordable housing activist, a single mom and daughter of undocumented Filipino immigrants, and a lifelong District 14 resident. She was born and raised in Highland Park, attended Pasadena City College, and put herself through college at UCLA, where she completed her bachelor's degree. And after graduating, she went on to UCLA School of Law, where she graduated with a JD with specializations in critical race studies and the David J. Epstein Program in Public Interest Law and Policy. After years of watching her local representatives betray her community time and time again, she decided to run for city council. She ran with a campaign platform focused on expanding affordable housing, ending homelessness, supporting small businesses, tackling the climate crisis, and building a more just economy for all. Councilmember, so excited to have you here. We were big fans of yours during the campaign, and it's so excited to talk to you as a council member. So welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Sorry for being tardy to the party. I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing and the support that you gave me during the campaign. It is just the beginning. I would say this is week 6, and it's been insane. It has been insane. What I can tell you is trying to get my sea legs while we are in the midst of an emergency is not ideal, but also just trying to assess where projects are and working with our partners to get up to speed, as it were, because I may be entering this as a newbie, but you all have been here already. And I know I made previous commitments to you all in the endorsement process and I want to come through on those, even with this hostile, budget. It's looking bleak with the money stuff, but I got to give a shout out to some work that CD14 has done beforehand in getting money for projects and really making sure that we follow through with those commitments. And one announcement that I can share on this call, which I don't think is public yet, is that we are hiring Kevin Occhibulo, who used to be field deputy, now at LADOT, to be our director of planning. And so under his purview, we'll also have the transportation projects. He's a CD14 resident, really advised me on transportation issues during the campaign, even for this questionnaire. And so, working with him on finishing those projects and thinking about how we can enhance connectivity, and also trying to figure out how we can leverage different funding sources to make the biggest impact on our communities for connectivity. So that's all I feel like I can give you right now. I mean, I heard about, there's so many things that we can do in this district. The BRT for Broadway has come up multiple times. Connecting all the way to Figueroa for the complete street for Venice and Rock the Boulevard. I will say, no car Olympics is a priority that has been expressed to us while we've been here, but also with the fires, our initial estimate today in council that was given to us for how much it would cost for reconstruction is right now at $350 million. And that was just an initial estimate, which I'm sure is going to increase and double. And the other thing is that we have to front the money, even though FEMA will hypothetically grant us that money, and where that will come from is going to happen during our annual budget cycle. So accomplishing some of the goals that even the voters have decided upon are things that I'm worried about, when it comes to HLA implementation. Other things that you probably can educate me on is I've heard the mayor's trying to work and make sure that our capital improvements are trying to be centralized in some way, with LADOT trying to guide that process, but I haven't been updated properly on that. So probably this is more of a conversation than it is me declaring what I'm going to do and just updating you on, we are in a fiscal emergency, but trying to do the things that we can and partnering with you. So one of the things I do propose, Kevin starts next week, and he'll probably meet with you all to follow, so that we can continue working together and finishing some of the projects that are already existing. So I think that's all I want to say right now, and just rather this be a dialogue.
Thank you so much. Those are all great updates. We have 8 curated questions that we're going to go through, and then we're going to open it up for audience questions and see if anyone else has questions for you, if that's all right.
Okay.
So you kind of answered the first one already, but I just wanted to give you a little bit more room. We're so excited about your win. We wanted to give you space to reflect on it, share with us your general philosophy on governing, and if there's any specific transportation plans or ideas you have coming into office. You did mention a few.
Mhm.
We get excited, this group gets excited about pedestrianization, bike and bus infrastructure, metro, or anything else on your mind from a transportation point of view.
Yeah, I mean, downtown is a big priority, I think, for us and the mayor in terms of, the Olympics backdrop, but also just connectivity and what we can do, and also the appetite for multimodality. I mean, a lot of the events that we had in downtown, that was that was what people were asking for, and a lot of activists that probably you all know that are in that space. And so it's exciting to think about what we can tinker with and experiment with here in downtown, or even just finish. I think that's a big goal in thinking about that. Another thing, in my research and thinking about as I was developing policy on the campaign, is thinking about broadly bringing back Broadway, but maybe we don't have to do it the same way. People are still excited about the streetcar. There is also money for the streetcar in like millions of dollars, right? And maybe it's not the same iteration, but what does that look like? And I know one of the other commitments was the pedestrianization of Broadway, and being interested in if that's how we bring back Broadway, in combination with small businesses, giving grants for the facades and just bringing back businesses and these events. I think some of the events fell flat, that were thrown together on Broadway at large, even though some, from a community standpoint, it was probably fun. But I think thinking about it and the long-term strategy, and what that could look like. So for me, placemaking is so important, and streetscaping is part of that. And so Broadway is like a site for that. Valley Boulevard is another site for that as well. So I think those are the things that I think about, and almost to me that seems like low-hanging fruit, because it feels like there are so many things that are already working for it, if we can just complete the vision, especially when we don't have as many resources. So getting creative with what already exists and trying to leverage it to make it better.
Thank you. Over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Michael. This question is a little long, so bear with me.
Okay.
So Metro has a bunch of projects that it has planned in downtown LA and in CD14, which we all know about. They're hugely impactful for both the council district and also for the city, and also for the county and the whole region. An example of some of them are the Quick Build Arts District station for the B and D lines. The environmental review for that was expected in 2022, but it still has not come out. Similarly, the LA River Bike Path was expected to release its environmental review in 2022, and that hasn't been released. Kind of for decades now, there's been talks about improvements along Flower, where the A and the E line runs at grade, and they get stuck behind cars and single occupancy vehicles, even though these are trains full of people trying to get to their destinations. Link Union Station, Broadway Quick Build BRT, they've already come up on this call. Those are projects that were supposed to be kind of starting construction at this point and still have not. There's a lot of metro projects that seem to be stuck in this specific kind of project purgatory in your district in downtown LA. So I think a big part of this is there's no champion right now to really push them across the finish line. There is going to be an upcoming vacancy on the Metro board for an LA City Council member or someone that will be appointed by Mayor Bass. Is that something you're interested in? Is that something you want to pursue? And then are there specific Metro projects outside of that position that you're really interested in kind of chasing or being the champion for in your district?
Yeah, I mean, that is something I'd be interested in pursuing. Public transit is so important. It has been so formative for me. And I think thinking about the connectivity, I mean, when we think about downtown and all of the metro stops that have been built in CD14, I think we have more than any other district, but also expanding it outside of downtown to East LA, I think, and the connections to it from even not city of LA proper, right? From what other people would call the real East LA and not just NILA, but thinking about the connectivity of that region to bring people in. I think that's important to me, even as I think about, what that position would mean. Landing those projects, are important. I think the Broadway BRT is important. I think the BRTs are great projects. Though controversial in certain parts of this district, I still think it's very important. Wanting to work with our supervisors to make sure that we could reprioritize some of these. I don't know how far that could go, but being on the Metro board would be an honor. We'd want to work on it and think about business models to make sure that we can continue to fund more services, because yeah, it's, you know, funding is always the issue, right? But thinking of ways we can increase revenue on that so we can finish some of these other projects or other services as well. I don't know who she's going to pick. I don't know if I'm the favorite. I don't think I am yet, but I'll work on that. I'll work on that.
Sounds good. Well, here's a softball for you after a 3-hour committee meeting. New York City just launched congestion pricing, which will charge drivers $9 to drive into Manhattan below 60th Street. The program is designed to improve street safety, raise billions of dollars for public transportation, reduce congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. I don't know if you've seen any of the social media, but we've been blown away by functional moving car traffic streets and not gridlock streets. It's really working just weeks after launch. Metro has been studying congestion pricing for LA, and the focus right now is on downtown LA and the downtown LA cordon. And the reason for that is it's really the most transit connected place in the region. Congestion pricing could raise hundreds of millions of dollars per year to help improve streets, sidewalks, public transportation in and around downtown. So the question is, what do you think of congestion pricing? Would you be supportive if Metro wanted to move it forward? And how would you like to see it or any other road pricing implemented?
I mean, I think it's an interesting model as we continue to be at a budget deficit, looking at additional ways to bring revenue into the city. I think even in a previous questionnaire, I've said that I supported congestion pricing and looking at that model, because even today, thinking about cost of something, I was like, how do we bring in revenue? And as we go through downtown, and some, I think, are residents here downtown as well, right? The city services do not meet the need to pick up the tons of trash that is required to keep the streets clean. The bids themselves are paying for the trash cans that are there. And part of what makes downtown not as alluring anymore is the lack of cleanliness, the lack of city services and street lighting that make it less attractive. And so wanting to encourage that walkability by increasing city services and attention to these communities obviously requires some kind of funding mechanism. And so I'm intrigued by this. I mean, I think we're all in agreement. Yeah, downtown is that place that is more where this can actually happen. And so wanting to look more into it, and based on our campaign and the folks that we talked to, downtown residents are generally amenable to that. It seems from maybe from my anecdotal evidence, I'll just caveat it that way, right? That they are interested in that and don't feel like that's going to be a huge issue for their lifestyle. Granted, when public comment for this issue will come up, there'll be a lot of angry people, I'm sure. Just like there were in New York. So was tracking that too.
Anything transformative is always hard. Kyle, over to you.
Thanks, Michael. So a question about the 710, and the story there. So of course, CD14 is home to one of our favorite recent funding methods. When the northern extension of the 710 got canceled, millions of dollars became available for the local streets in the area. So it included major projects on Huntington, Valley, Eagle Rock, of course, involved wider sidewalks, safer pedestrian crossings, trees, curb extensions, or curb level bike lanes, dedicated bus lanes. But still, the funding's a little short, right? And so Eagle Rock alone is short $6 million, despite having the 710 funds supplemented with the County Measure W grant. So I mean, of course, I'm sure you have shown your support for some of these, but really we're curious how we could finish funding them, if there's a certain prioritization approach you have there. Would you consider a budget request to fill funding gaps, reevaluating some of the less ambitious 710 projects that were developed last minute by the prior administration, or what other types of strategies come to mind for you?
Yeah, right now we're still looking at what were the previous requests and motions and whether these funds were encumbered or not. So even those commitments, we're just trying to verify whether there. One of the projects that I think you mentioned was about Valley Boulevard. I have to look at it again. But I mean, that was a commitment that we made. But I think that's something I would have to have more conversations about to figure out what funding is available and what previous commitments there were. Because as I'm just be candid, CD14's coffers are drier than expected because there are continual receipts for expenditures that were not covered by the previous administration that continue to come in. But thinking about how we fund, like it is top of mind for me of trying to find additional resources to fund capital improvement projects. And so what does that mean and how do we do that and how can we allocate staff time to make sure we finish projects, or even if it's just this 1 mile of bike lane that we need, how can we get the funding for that is something that I'm thinking about while we hire folks and what skill sets they can bring to the table, given that the general fund is not an option. So I know that's not an imperfect, that's an imperfect answer. And it just means that, Kyle, we have a lot of work to do.
Understand. Totally understand. Thank you.
Well, I've got the next question. Welcome tonight. This is about the Olympics in just, 3 years and change.
Oh, yeah.
CD14 is going to play a really big part in the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Of course, downtown, but also other parts. There's going to be events near the convention center. There's the media village, as well as all the hotels sort of in that area. How do you feel about the games and the role that the district is going to play as the heart of the transportation network during the games? What are your worries? And conversely, is there anything excited about? And are there goals or projects you'd like to see finished for the games? Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So dreams, worries, and fears, or things that I like, things I hate. which which order should I go first? I think, how do I feel about it being the heart? I love it. We want to, I want to bring a return to downtown being a destination that people want to go to and kind of rebuff the myth, or, the current perception that it's unsafe, it's not desirable. So bringing that back and bringing downtown back is so important to me. I think in terms of it being a media hub, I think there are different conversations of where the media hub would be, but would love to see a media hub downtown. And, when I go to my interviews, I have to go all the way to El Segundo. And if we can have a media hub that will be long lasting and be in the city where people have to go to work so that we have constant presence downtown and small businesses can thrive again, that would be something that I think is a great opportunity as well. I really think about long lasting, like the legacy of the Olympics that could happen downtown. And hopefully it's not just a bunch of one-way street signs. Maybe we can rethink all of those one-way street signs, which are a relic from '84, right? To make sure that we have better connectivity even. And thinking about like, how do we retool some of our bus systems so that we can connect folks to our train stations and east and west. Things like that, right? The other things that we're thinking about in terms of the Olympics, you said media village. Oh, I didn't touch on this renovation of the convention center, expanding our hotel capacity to accommodate the renovations at the convention center. Also providing good union jobs and, increasing our revenue, which is important through the TOT. And making sure that people can safely get from place to place. Like the beautiful thing about, the whole thing is that it should be like a walkable modal experience. And so I'm a soccer mom. My daughter did the Youth World Cup and it was in Europe. And it was basically like a conference, right? And so it was like a hotel. Where was it? It was in Sweden. So I was very lucky. But you know, it was in Sweden where we rode the bus, we rode the train, we walked, we biked, we did everything to get to all of the sites for the games. And wanting to have that experience be in downtown, like I think that is like perceived goal for some of it. But how do we actually actualize it, right? So that's stuff that I'm thinking about, and I'm hopeful about what I fear. We don't have money. We're not prepared for an emergency. And it's not going to happen. I think those are the things that I think we all share. But overall, I think there is a determination to get there and figuring it out and hopefully leveraging existing partners to get there.
That's really cool you were able to go to Sweden with your daughter.
Yeah, she makes me do crazy things. As a parent, I would never have gone to, what was it, Gothenburg specifically. So Gothia. But yeah, so I think, you know, those kind of experiences replicating here in LA and thinking about how that would be possible. And I know Dan Rodman's now working on, you know, the mayor's office of major projects with Council President Emeritus Paul Krikorian. So trying to think about how we can actualize some of these things.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take the next question. It is about Venice Blvd For All. It's been one of our signature issues since the beginning, and we want to be able to bike and use transit from the ocean to downtown along the Venice corridor. We have gotten the support from the Downtown LA Neighborhood Council, as well as both relevant bids for the project. It includes a bus-only lane on Venice until Main Street and protected bike lanes when Venice turns into 16th Street to San Pedro. It also would implement protected bike lanes on 12th Street from Figueroa to San Pedro. We would love to hear your thoughts on this project and if we might be able to work together to find a path forward. And I will just say, given the city is considering Pico for the bike lane, maybe we like that plan, frankly, even better than our neighborhood network. So maybe we could also work on that together and do the rest of the elements in CD14.
Yeah, I think I've already committed to supporting this project too, but definitely follow up with Kevin on, you know, what the priority could be here.
Great, thank you. Katrina, over to you on 6th Street.
Yeah, our next question is about the 6th Street Bridge. This is, of course, you know, a really high profile piece of infrastructure where it came out with an ambitious plan, but its execution had some gaps in it. Currently, the bike lane on 6th Street ends at Central, leaving a dangerous gap of several blocks until you get to the bridge. And then continuing east, there's also no bike lanes past Boyle Avenue on Whittier Boulevard. The mobility plan calls for protected bike lanes to fill these gaps basically from Central all the way through Indiana Street. Plus, now they're required under Measure HLA. Would you be able to push to close these gaps in the bike network over the river and implement protected bike lanes on Whittier all the way to Indiana Street? Plus, based on what you've seen and heard from constituents, how else do you think we could improve safety and the traveler community experience around the 6th Street Bridge?
Yeah, I'm like trying to think about it, the last question. Could you repeat the first part? Sorry. Yeah.
First part is, would you be able to push to close the gaps in the bike network and implement protected bike lanes on Whittier through Indiana Street, as well as on Central, or as well as on the western side of the river? And then the second part is, how else do you think we could improve safety and the traveler experience on and around the bridge?
Oh, okay. I think with the first part, we have to get more, you know, community input. I think there's a lot of folks that are in Boyle Heights that do use use bikes, but also talking with the constituents over there. The other thing about the safety on the bridge, I think the lighting is one of the biggest issues that we've run into, safety issues, not just for bikers, but for runners. I mean, if you're familiar with Boyle Heights Bridge Runners, they use it every Wednesday, and that's one of their primary, complaints, aside from the fact that all the streets in Boyle Heights are kind of need repair as well. And so those are the things that we're thinking about right now.
Thank you. Let's go to some audience questions. The first one is from Michael McDonald. Safety on North Figueroa has suffered for many years, basically from neglect or even outright spite from former council members. Now CD1 has different leadership. CD14 obviously has different leadership. Is improving safety in North Figueroa something that you could be interested in working with in collaboration with Councilmember Hernandez? And what can advocates do to assist?
Yeah, maybe that's like, I don't know, Michael, I think you know where I live. So, I'm personally invested on Figueroa. And just to witness so many accidents on there, one from the pedestrian angle, and knowing how unsafe it is compared to other streets. Absent COVID, like, because there's no longer COVID, my daughter and I do not bike on Figueroa anymore together. It's just me, because she doesn't feel safe, compared to maybe like, in Mar Vista or something like that. So I think that's something I'm personally invested in. I think as we continue to build up our teams, we haven't approached CD1 about this issue, but I think it would be something that we could collaborate on to make sure that we can have that. I know that we're inspired by what CD4 and CD13 have been able to do together. And so wanting to continue that collaboration in our districts as well.
Thank you. The next question is back to Broadway. What are your thoughts on pedestrianizing Broadway? Would you support such an initiative? Additionally, how do you feel about other community-led efforts to pedestrianize streets such as 2nd Street, Little Tokyo, or Grand Avenue in Bunker Hill?
Ooh, 2nd Street sounds exciting. And I'd love to know more about the community efforts in both 2nd Street and Bunker Hill.
Okay, we'll see if we can get you this.
Yeah.
And Broadway, I know you talked about extensively, but just to sum it up, what are your thoughts on pedestrianizing it?
I think I'm open to it. I think bringing back Broadway is something I'm interested in, seeing what all kind of components that could be. And pedestrianizing it is one of those, as well as we attract development and small businesses and provide grants to make sure that businesses stay there and create events that make sure that it continues to be walkable. And so closing it down just seems like it makes sense if we want it to be, that kind of destination and hub.
Next question is from Brian. Do you support electrification of the mainland railroad tracks through CD14, Union Pacific, the LATC container yard, Metrolink San Bernardino line, as well as the Alameda corridor, which is not in CD14, but it's co-owned by the city of LA?
I think I need to learn more about that. I don't know enough to make it convenient right now.
Okay. Next question is from Ryan. Downtown has a nice network of protected bike lanes. One gap I see is no eastbound bike lane in the South Park. 12th Street is lightly traveled and would pair well with westbound 11th Street. Has any thought been given out to a lane and putting in a protected bike lane there? And I will point out, Ryan, that is actually part of the Venice Blvd For All vision, that there would be a eastbound bike lane on 12th.
Great.
But anything else you wanted to add?
That would connect well with the new Pico bike lane too.
I was like, Michael brought that up earlier. Okay.
Yes.
So you gotta work for us.
All right. Next question. How could we add scramble crossings on Broadway? So in case it wasn't fully pedestrianized, a scramble crosswalk.
Oh, that's a Kevin question. I think I'd have to talk to Kevin when he'd come here to talk about how we add that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Leslie asked, generally speaking, what core beliefs made LA so car-centric? How can we tackle those beliefs to create more spaces for pedestrians, cyclists, rollers, scooterists, roller skaters, and public transit? So I don't know if you have any general thoughts about, I guess, the culture of LA being so car-centric.
I'm like manifest destiny. Manifest destiny and freeway culture and McDonald's. I think it goes back to that. And, you know, histories of white flight and getting out from the urban core really, really quickly. I think to me, that is the root of part of why we have that car-centric culture, and working class people that end up being of color being driven further away from, you know, centers from where they work, which I think is a huge issue for me, and thinking about how we can bring people closer to work again so that they save money and their quality of life improves by having a safe, walkable neighborhood where you know, you can go to work and walk to school. Like, it shouldn't be a luxury to walk your child to school, which is not an average occurrence for a lot of Angelenos. I know it wasn't for me for my childhood, partially because of street safety, not to automobiles, but gang violence. But now, you know, as HLA has shown, people get killed more by lack of street safety versus, you know, gun violence. So thinking about those issues. So I know I answered the first one. And then what was the second part of the question?
It was just how do we create more spaces, safer spaces for basically everyone outside of the car.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe bring people along, people that aren't used to that kind of stuff, that only see themselves driving to absolutely everything. How do you go about changing hearts and minds and convincing people that there might be a better way for some of those trips some of the time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think narratively, one of the things on the campaign that I was doing, working class people use public transit because they have to. So it's not like you have to convince them about that. It's kind of the people that do rely on their cars and who, you know, I'm included in that, but who just don't think it's an actual possibility. And, you know, narratively, what I do is I ask them if they've traveled outside of the country, which, you know, these folks probably have. And if they went to Mexico City, they've gone to Sweden, they've gone to Japan, they've gone to Chicago, or they've gone to New York, or, you know, DC. And if they use public transit there, and if they're, but I like to use the ones where they're like, you know, in a different country, because even though it's in a different foreign language that they probably have no access to whatsoever, they're willing to use transit because it's affordable, it's accessible, and it's safe. And part of it is because it's super crowded, you know, and having that connectivity. And so thinking like, if you're able to do that in a foreign country, why aren't you able to do that at home? And how much of your life can be saved, of your time can be saved by not having to navigate parking, travel time, you know, and also bringing back the idea of being in community with one another, and also just time with your family, right? How much time, I mean, most people that I talk to are in their cars alone. Even though we can have more carpool lanes, which I don't think reduces traffic, right? And you can incentivize van pool programs. It doesn't replicate the, you know, ease of having transit available at multiple times of day at multiple stops that make it feasible for, you know, someone like me that is a soccer mom to go to soccer practice after work and have my kid do it, or, you know, have my kid use it on her own, which is just not the situation right now. And so trying to think about that. And the other issues that came up was about safety, right? You know, having real conversations about safety in the neighborhoods where these stops are, on the train, on bus stops. And so continuing to think about how do we invest in safety in all different kinds of ways, with like our Metro ambassadors and other options, in order to make sure the experience feels feels better for folks, so they will use it.
One of the things we like to talk about is how our transportation system turns people with kids into their kids' Uber drivers, because there's very few safe ways for their kids to get around on their own. We would love to change that. Okay, couple of last questions. Question about homelessness. So basically the question is, if you want to share anything about your plans to help people experiencing homelessness, obviously a huge concentration in CD14. And just wanted to give you a space if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, we just came from H&H committee, Housing and Homelessness Committee, just thinking about the emergency response to sheltering, we were evacuating our own sheltered community during the crisis. We've hired Steve Diaz as our Housing and Homelessness Director, formerly with the county, formerly with LA CAN. And, we're developing our policies as we go along, but thinking about Skid Row and getting folks the resources they need, addressing it like a neighborhood that it truly is, and providing it with city services, but also making sure that we provide them not just with housing, but with supportive services as well. And from our committee meeting, these priorities, trying to translate that in our committee. I am running on empty.
It's late, no problem.
Yeah, for me, I go to sleep in like 3 hours. I go to bed early. But thinking about, so it's housing and services. In our committee that is run by Councilmember Rahman, she really wants to focus not just on homelessness services, but also on housing production. And I think for me, that is also a priority, and thinking about how we can hasten housing production to meet the needs of unhoused people, but the lack of affordability for even middle income residents that are living throughout the city. And so, thinking about development and what development we can incentivize or package together in order to build more housing is something that I'm interested in, especially in our district. CD14 itself is it is where development can happen. And so thinking about that equation in tandem with transportation initiatives and who we're attracting and who we can keep is something that I think they can complement each other as we think about development in the downtown area. So I think I touched on a lot of different things and maybe didn't answer the question, but
you're doing great. We have one, maybe two last questions, and then we'll go ahead and let you get some rest. This is from Pilar. I'm a resident of Garvanza. I've met with your predecessors who have both promised implementation of a complete street along Avenue 64, which is a connector route between the 110 and 134. To date, nothing has been done despite 3 pedestrian fatalities and 1 cyclist fatality. We need your help. Just wanted to give you a chance to comment on that.
I'm like, hi, Pilar. I don't know where you are, but I'm gonna. Oh, hi, Pilar. I see you. Okay. I'm like, I can give you, can you just message me your information so then I can get my office to contact you? Oops.
Pilar, if you send me what information you want to pass on, we'll make sure it's passed on to the office.
Okay, awesome.
Maybe the last question that we have time for from Brian: can we expedite the Link Union Station project? Have community members brought up any concerns about the project?
I haven't heard from community members about that project.
Okay. Any thoughts on when I think when he says expedite, it means, how can we get it to move? It has been moving sluggishly, as have many CD14 metro projects, like Josh pointed out.
Yeah, I think one thing, I'm trying to have monthly meetings with the supervisors that overlap in my district, and I can bring it to their attention.
Great. And Pilar put her contact info in the chat, so you have it there. I can still send it if you want me to.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
All right. Very last quick question, and then we'll close. What transportation related requests do you get from your constituents outside of downtown? What projects have they told you are priorities?
Oh my God. Right now, constituent wise, one of the things that they just want safe streets. Whether it's like protecting it from potholes or reducing the speeds on streets. That's like the biggest thing. People really want speed bumps and they don't want roundabouts. Those are the two things that there are some complaints of not even in my district about the roundabouts and how silly they are. But then at the same time, people are saying we really want to slow down traffic. So those are the two things that people are talking about when it comes to that.
Makes sense. Okay. I know it's been a marathon. Thank you for answering all of our questions. Our community is just so excited to have you in the seat. Just wanted to give you a chance, if you'd like it, to just say any closing words, anything that we can help you with. This is so first of all, this is being recorded, so it'll be seen by many more people, but we had over 100 RSVPs, which is a lot for one of our happy hours. So people are really excited, full of energy. How can people help you accomplish some of these things we've been talking about, and anything else you'd like to say as we close?
Yes, so, we are just beginning. I'm definitely going to connect Kevin with Streets for All so that he can have a meeting with you all in his official capacity and start talking about these projects and where we can start really working and digging deep, working together on them. The second thing that I'll say is, we are on our listening tour. This is part of it, is an information gathering and meeting people who maybe we didn't reach during the campaign, because sometimes it's just a self-selecting sample. But more often than not, I have found that constituents or stakeholders themselves have identified the problem and also the solutions. Streets for All is one of the prime, I think, a great example of like problem identification and solution, and then action, like you all do. And so we are looking to have meet and greets all throughout the district of part of our listening tour. So if you know folks that would be interesting to host or have different vantage points, whether it's transportation related or not, that can bring their concerns or ideas or anything up to the fore, I think that would be great. So I can give Michael and Streets for All Kevin's contact information and the other person that's planning the listening tour, so we can continue to see each other. It's supposed to be the first 100 days, but really, this is an ongoing process. And I want you all to, make sure that you feel included in these conversations and that our door is open. Don't take endorsements for granted or lightly. And at the end of the day, I do see a lot of your membership, I think, is in my district too, but also see this as a valuable partnership where the city doesn't always have the resources to meet all of the needs. And to that extent, also having all of the expertise. So, leaning on community partners who do have the expertise is important for us to accomplish our goals in whatever way we can. So hope that we can continue to work together.
Well, thank you so much. And by the way, we have worked with Kevin. We worked with him on permanent slow streets implementation a few years ago. So we know him and excited to work with him in his official capacity in your office. I know it's been a long afternoon for you, so I just want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everybody on this Zoom, for your patience, and we'll talk very soon. Have a good night, everybody. Good night.